are familiar with the competition legislation. I don't think the subject matter comes near competition legislation. Anneke has put the recorder on. What we do is we record these meetings, these sessions we have. After this, Anneke sends out a note saying that this has taken place. The recording then goes to YouTube. When you go to YouTube, you type in Aspasa, and then you say women in mining, and then you're going to get it, but not today, not tomorrow, maybe in 2-3 days' time. So that's where you get all our workshops. We're putting it all on YouTube, and I would suggest that once you've got it on YouTube, that you then maybe share it with people in your company who couldn't make it or who didn't attend or so forth. So that's quite important that people understand that. So it is recorded. The competition legislation is applicable, so we're very wary about that. And then I think that the MS Teams, the Teams rules are, if you're not talking, put your mic off and your face, take it off, and yeah, put your hand up if you want to make any comments. Most of you know it by now. Maybe the people on Zoom battle a bit with it. I battle with Zoom. I'm not fond of Zoom, but Teams is very easy. All the little blocks are at the top there. Now, today, it started off, we had a meeting in Women in Mining, and Anneke, the lady who's in charge of Aspasa, she decided one day that, after talking to me, that she's also not very hysterical about women in mining, and she then came up with the gender justice, which I thought was brilliant, and I think that's what it's about. So before I'll go off now, and I'm going to welcome the chairperson, who's Letitia van der Berg. She's very, very active in our part of the industry. And maybe just in short, we have these people, they work for companies, and they are so involved. I've got a technical chairperson that's involved. I've got an engineering chairperson that's involved. I've got an environmental guy that's involved. I've got Letitia that's now actually pulled this thing up and put people in and so forth. So thanks to her, and thanks for all the hard work, because it's a lot of hard work. Our next one for next year, and we're going to ask the people, and Letitia will also just summarize it when she says bye-bye, the end, is the 12th of the 4th month next year. So if there's any ideas, any input that you think we should do, let Anneke know, and Anneke will share it with Letitia and get some other interesting people to speak. So that's all I want to say. Letitia, bye, donkey. Thanks for taking this on, and all of the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nico. Welcome everybody to this session. And just, I think as a little bit of a background, that it's not just women in mining that's fighting the fight. We must also realize that this is a government drive. The 16 Days of Activism 2021 was circulated not so long ago on their website. And for those who don't know where this was born from, the 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women, Children campaign is a United Nations campaign which takes place annually between the 25th of November and the 10th of December. The 25th of November being the International Day of No Violence Against Women, and then the 10th of December, International Human Rights Day. But also in between is the 1st of December, which is the International Day for HIV/AIDS, and also the 3rd of December, which is International Day for Persons with Disabilities. So as you can see, from 25th of November to the 3rd of December, there's a lot of items happening for health and for the safety of women, and also for no violence against women and children. And in September 2019, President Cyril Ramaphosa has started the 16 Days of Activism even before the pandemic. And as you know, with COVID-19 and the pandemic, the violence against women and children increased drastically. I'm just going to give you a short overview. Johan asked me just to give him 5 minutes and then he'll dial in. I'll keep my eye open for him dialing in. So for communities, It says, A, be an activist against gender-based violence in your homes, communities, work, and positions. Challenge cultures and practices that perpetuate gender inequalities and consequent abuse of women and children at personal and social level. And now you might ask, but how are we going to do it at small-scale mining? And the easy answer is through platforms like Aspasa. And secondly, is any information that you give to your employees and awareness on gender-based violence and equality must go home. So give a pamphlet to them to take home to their communities. And then play your part. That is the B portion of the 16 Days of Activism 2021. That is, reject and report abuse. Do not protect abusers, report them. Sign the pledge. Afrimat has a pledge. We're going to renew it now. We've asked that we renew it for 2021 for against gender-based violence. Challenge and denounce cultural practices that perpetuate gender inequality. Be sensitive and supporters to gender-based violence victims. Seek personal help to change harmful behaviors. Teach children the values of gender equality. Protect children from exposure to violence and harmful content on internet and social media. And as you know, in schools, many schools have stopped the use of smartphones. You may only bring your old Nokia. What was that fancy Nokia that was so popular? That can do no internet. And develop policies that prevent and deal with gender-based violence in your sector, workplace, and communities. We will definitely share this link so that you in your workplaces also have programs in place. But today is the starting point for small-scale mining, supporting the 16 Days activists and also supporting women in mining. I see Johan Robenheimer is ready. So Johan Robenheimer is an advocate and is very involved in mine health and safety operations, very familiar with mining, and you are welcome to contact him after the session for any further support that you need with regards to either Mine Health and Safety Act or harassment in the workplace. Welcome, Johan, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Letitia. I appreciate your patience. I just set up here in the, can you believe it, the mine manager's office. I'm quite fortunate. Today I'm here on a mine with an investigation. And thank you for the opportunity to present. Do you hear me well?
Yes, thank you.
And my presentation, is it appearing on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. I'm a legal practitioner in the mining sector. I can tell you it's much better than divorces and civil and criminal action that I've done previously. The mining industry is a river that runs through it. It's a mile wide and an inch deep. Everything in law comes together in mining. But my fields of expertise is centered around human resources, mine health and safety, criminal where there's statutory prosecutions following fatality, and a little bit of administrative law that goes with the mining sector. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are sitting with, we're in a society where gender-based violence is a hot topic. And a hot topic may not do justice to this subject, because it has been there for a long time, if not forever. However, it has come to the fore. Government has taken notice of it. Legislature has taken notice of the risk associated with sexual harassment and gender-based violence in the workplace. So much so that we have in the Labour Relations Act, in Schedule 8, a specific item that deals with cases and managing cases of sexual harassment in the workplace. I'm going to work through my presentation, and then I've got 2 audio clips or video clips that I would like to show you. And I would like to give credit to the Mine Health and Safety Council that has developed a short information video on sexual harassment in the mining industry, which is quite informative, I must say. And then I have a short clip that I will show you also, just maybe to lighten the topic. But the reality is sexual harassment in the workplace is real. It happens on a day-to-day basis. More often than not, it does not come to the fore because of the victim being afraid to be seen as the whistleblower, as the complainant, with the idea in the back of his or her mind, and I say his or her, because it happens to women and men equally in the workplace, to come to the fore and suffer the consequences, the downstream consequences of having complained towards a supervisor or a manager. Now, the aim of this presentation is to equip you within the mining industry, particularly females, with a working knowledge of what constitutes sexual harassment in the workplace and how this invariably affects the health and possible safety of employees, male and female, in the workplace, and what the possible consequences and legal ramifications there might be for the employer. And take note, there's a flip side to the coin here. It's not only the rights and the responsibilities of the employee that we're going to discuss, but also the rights and responsibilities and possible liabilities of the employer that is important. Now, sexual harassment may be described as a persistent, unsolicited, unwanted sexual advance by one person to another. Have a look at the lingo. Unsolicited, persistent, and unwanted. In English law, persistent and unwanted erroneous advances by one employer to a member of staff, female or male, have been held to provide a basis for constructive dismissal if the employee abandons her position as a result. Now, constructive dismissal, we know in the South African field of labor law, is a situation where your position within the company has become untenable due to influences exerted upon yourself within the employment context. You have no other choice but to resign. And that is stated as constructive dismissal. And obviously, there's consequences. You have rights. You can take the matter to the CCMA in the form of a dispute and take it up against your employer there. The same in American law as with the English law, where sexual harassment is considered to be a form of discrimination. Now, there's also something that we've taken out of the American book in the sense that sexual harassment is also regarded as a form of discrimination. Both English courts and its American cousin have held that a duty rests on employers to protect their employees from sexual harassment by other employees and or customers. Make no mistake. It has been recognized that employees may be dismissed for sexually harassing colleagues of either sex. Now, this is important because dismissal can only come from, unless it's constructive dismissal, from the employer's side. And dismissal follows invariably on a finding of guilt of misconduct. Misconduct, we know, can only come about when you have breached a rule, which obviously presupposes that there must be a policy, a sexual harassment policy in the workplace, and a very unequivocal rule that sexual harassment in the workplace will not be tolerated and it should be noted as a dismissible offense. Now, the South African view is in South Africa, the courts and arbitrators have taken a similar view as to the British and the American stance. And one of the first reported cases of this nature decided by the former industrial court, remember the industrial court came before the labor court in 1994, which came about with the promulgation of the Labor Relations Act. In the industrial court, in the previous era, dismissal was upheld of a senior executive for his amorous habits. What was established and emphasized in this matter is that sexual harassment between opposite and or same sexes is a serious matter requiring the attention of employers. Now, in the previous era, if I may refer to it, pre-1994, there was a somewhat different view towards individuals' rights in the workplace that we know. And sexual harassment, unfortunately, was not on the top of the priority list in terms of misconduct in the workplace. That, fortunately, has changed now. What was established and emphasized in the matter that we are talking about is that sexual harassment, yes, is a serious matter. What is important is to note that the court pointed out that whatever form it takes, sexual harassment violates the victim's right to integrity of the body and personality, and is aggravated in the employment context by the fact that victims are sometimes afraid to complain because to do so could lead to a loss of opportunities or even dismissal in the long run. Now, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, this is real. It happens. If you have not been a victim of sexual harassment, you would not be, unfortunately, be in a position to fully appreciate what is stated here. The right to bodily integrity is a basic human right. It's also enshrined in the Bill of Rights, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of South Africa. And it is sacred. There's a sanctity to it that cannot be breached or violated. I have, and I can confess, it's been a long time ago, but I have been a victim of sexual harassment, not in the workplace, but from a colleague when I was still within the formal legal fraternity at the bar. And I must tell you that it is not as harmonious as we might think between a man and a woman. It is really invasive. It really puts you at unease. It really makes you think, what have I done to deserve this or even to solicit this in any form? And I say this not because I am a victim, but because I can attest to the fact that it is really a situation where your bodily integrity is being impaired. Now, knowing that, I can appreciate that a lady or a man in the workplace might find this so unsettling to the extent that I do not even want to report it. I'm embarrassed. I'm questioning myself. What has gone wrong? Have I overstepped the boundaries? Why has this happened to me? And that is precisely why the employer must see to it that there's a policy and procedures and human resources available to attend to any such complaint in whatever form when it comes about, with the necessary sensitivity and professionalism to place the complainant in a position to understand what has happened, what is happening, and what is going to happen, and the process going forward, obviously, with the sensitivity that it deserves, even if it should be shrined in confidentiality. Now, the effect of sexual harassment on employees in a workplace have far-reaching implications, not only for the victim of the harassment, but also for the organization where sexual harassment occurred. Now, this is important because sexual harassment then ranks within one of the items of risk management within any company. And I'll tell you why later when we go through and we look at some reported cases. Victims of sexual harassment feel humiliated, degraded, ashamed, and embarrassed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, take note of those terms because I understand that the next topic or the next speaker will speak about rape. These terms fall squarely within the ambit of rape. That's how serious it is. Victims are also affected psychologically and can display physical or psychical symptoms such as depression, anxiety, guilt, low self-esteem, and insecurity because of this. This will invariably have an effect on the victim's performance in the workplace and might lead to a drop in production. But in my field of expertise, health and safety, it might lead to a lack of focus. And a lack of focus in the mining industry is a very, very serious situation in the sense that when you do not concentrate, when your mind is not applied to the job at hand, safety becomes an issue. Now, sexual harassment can affect the organization in many ways. Obviously, it reduces the employee's morale and motivation, which leads to increase in absenteeism. That's a very, very clear telltale to pick up from the HR side, distraction, stress, and also staff turnover. It can further lead to a drop in respect of persons who possesses power and superiority in the organization and can have a detrimental effect on the organization's reputation. Reputational risk of an organization, especially when it has been listed as a company on the stock exchange is very important. You have to guard it. And sexual harassment, believe it or not, can also impact and affect that. If the organization does nothing to prevent sexual harassment from occurring in the workplace, this might lead to expensive litigation. Now, having regards to the effect of sexual harassment on both the victim and the organization, it has become increasingly important for employers to prevent sexual harassment from occurring in the workplace and to encourage a workplace free of harassment, sexual harassment in this instance. Now, there's some statutory prohibitions. Statutory meaning, in terms of law, it is against the law to harass somebody sexually. And the first section that speaks towards this is Section 6 sub 3 of the Employment Equity Act, 55 of 1998. Sexual harassment is a form of discrimination and it is thus prohibited. And the Code on Handling Sexual Harassment Cases, the code, which we will find in the Labour Relations Act, furthermore places an obligation on employers to eliminate sexual harassment in the workplace. This means, in terms of law, you are obligated to guard against sexual harassment, to put measures and policies in place to prevent, manage, and mitigate the occurrences of sexual harassment. And if you do not do so, there will be consequences. Consequences in terms of breaching an act, and that might incur penalties. Now, in terms of the Labour Relations Act, what is sexual harassment? Let's look at the definition. Sexual harassment is unwanted conduct of a sexual nature. The unwanted nature of sexual harassment distinguishes it from behavior that is welcome and mutual, whether it's invited. Sexual attention becomes sexual harassment if, and this is important, the behavior is persistent in, although a singular incident of harassment can constitute sexual harassment depending on the severity of it, and or the recipient has made it clear that the behavior is considered offensive, meaning an unequivocal no, and or verbally or in terms of your bodily attitude, or the perpetrator should have known that the behavior is regarded as unacceptable. Now, that's the definition in terms of the Labour Relations Act of sexual harassment. It's wide in its scope, and it covers most instances with the rider that it must be unwanted. It cannot be invited, it cannot be by mutual consent, and there must be a clear message that this is unwanted and uncalled for. On the flip side of the coin, the transgressor should also have known at the time that it is unacceptable. Now, we have different forms of sexual harassment, such as physical conduct of a sexual nature, which includes unwanted physical contact, ranging from touching to sexual assault and even rape, and includes a strip search by or in the presence of the opposite sex. Make very sure, it seems so obvious, but you know, the obvious is not so obvious in our new society, that when there is a search of a bodily padding, as we sometimes have with some of the high security industries, make sure that your company policy dictates that a female will be searched by a female security person, and the other way around, male on male. Another form of sexual harassment is also the verbal forms, and it includes unwelcome innuendos, suggestions, and hints, sexual advances, comments with sexual overtones, sex-related jokes or insults, or unwelcome graphic comments about a person's body made in their presence or to them, which is unwelcome, inappropriate, and also inquiries about a person's sex life. Unwelcome whistling at a person or a group of persons. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this much in the legal fraternity, and I don't want to at all paint a bad picture of us as legal practitioners. But I do recall as a young practitioner sitting in boardroom meetings or even group meetings where jokes, slogans, suggestions were rife. But at that stage, it was not as if it was accepted, but it was not seen in the serious light that we see it today. Thinking back, I must say that in certain instances, I should have been horrified. But it was as if the society at the time did not regard this in the serious light as we have it today. It happens easy, it happens quickly, and it happens without somebody thinking or knowing. Therefore, all the more reason that the employer should sensitize its workforce from the bottom up on what sexual harassment means, what it is, what's the forms, what's the definitions, and also the repercussions. If you do not do that, you might be seen to be failing as an employer. Further on forms of sexual harassment, non-verbal forms, which include unwelcome gestures, indecent exposure, and the unwelcome display of sexually explicit pictures and objects. Also, quid pro quo harassment. Quid pro quo meaning, I give you something, you give me something in return. This occurs when an owner, employer, supervisor, member of management, or co-employee undertakes or attempts to influence or influences the process of employment, promotion, training, discipline, dismissal, salary increases, or other benefits of an employee or job applicant in exchange for a sexual favor. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, under the covers, this happens more often than not. Sexual favoritism exists where a person who's in a position of authority rewards only those who respond to his or her sexual advances, while other deserving employees who do not submit sexual advances are denied promotions or opportunities, merit raisings, or salary increases. Now, information and education towards managing or preventing sexual harassment. The key is information and education. Now, there's certain structures that the state has put in place or requires that can assist with this. Just a moment, let me just close this door. And the state, through its Department of Labor, should ensure that copies of guidelines are accessible and available. There is guidelines in terms of how policies should be constructed and what information should be included. Employers and employee organizations should include the issue of sexual harassment in their orientation, education, and training programs for employees. Trade unions, because we are all social partners in a tripartite relationship, should include the issue of sexual harassment in the education and training programs for shop stewards and employees or members alike. Arbitrators should receive special training to deal with sexual harassment cases. And the reason for that is very clear and should be obvious. When you're sitting with a sexual harassment case, it's very personal. There has been infringement of your bodily integrity. To deal with it as you would with an ordinarily or normal disciplinary inquiry just simply don't cut it. Why? The complainant will have to sit and face the alleged perpetrator. That might lead to some unease, some intimidation, and we also have had in the past instances where on the verge of a disciplinary inquiry, the complaint is withdrawn. Why? Simply because the complainant does not feel up to it, does not have the courage to place on record what's actually happened because of the embarrassment or the individual insecurity under these circumstances. So you need to deal with this with a large measure of sensitivity. And the process ordinarily is firstly in informal meeting, one-on-one, between the complainant and the human resource manager or manageress or a person appointed to deal with these type of sensitive issues in order to understand what precisely is the complaint and what was the circumstances of the complaint, giving the complainant the opportunity to choose between a mediation or conciliatory process, alternatively, if it is not successful, or outright to go through the formal route of a disciplinary inquiry with the adequate safeguards in place in terms of exposure. Right, but now there's a burden of proof. In any disciplinary inquiry, we know that there's an onus. Those who allege must prove. This has always been very difficult in sexual harassment cases, and it originates from sexual assault or indecent assault doctrines or processes and case law where it is being determined by the state whether there was an indecent assault or rape, especially in instances which happens more often than not, where it is in an isolated area, meaning it's the complainant and the transgressor. We always spoke about the cautionary rule. That, however, has been removed from our jurisprudence in terms of the Amendment Act, that there should be caution to accept the word of the complainant when there is not substantiating evidence or contributing evidence or testimony to indeed establish and support the claim. Why? The perception was at that time, when the two mutually destructive versions of this sensitive nature, that one should be cautious to simply take the word of the complainant against the person that is being accused, because it happens isolated more often than not, under the cover of night, as you would have it. This, however, has been taken and removed from our jurisprudence and principles. If disciplinary action is taken in terms of labor law against the employee for sexual harassment, the employer must prove that the employee was guilty of that offense and hold a proper disciplinary inquiry. So, the employer must prove that the employee is guilty of the offense. So there's a complaint, and the employer must then charge. The test of whether an approach amounts to harassment is difficult because it's partly objective, partly subjective. What happened? Yes, this was the physical act. How was it perceived by the complainant? That's the subjective part. But intent is very important to establish. What was the intent of the perpetrator through the conduct that occurred at the time where sexual harassment came about? Now, to give some guidance, there's been a couple of reported cases, and in terms of law, we look at the common law, the statutory law, and then, of course, the stare decisis principle, which is case law on point, which is stated to be reportable and taken to be a precedent when reported, published, as the guidelines in terms of determining a certain dispute or topic. Now, in the instance of sexual harassment, as long ago as 2004, there was a very, very important case. It was a watermark case, for lack of a better word. And it's the matter of Grobler versus Naspers, Beperk and another, 2004. Now, Ms. Grobler, in this instance, was a secretary. She resigned after she was subjected for a number of months to repeated sexual advances from a trainee manager. The advances included sexual suggestions, kissing, and other forms of physical contact, and ultimately the drawing of a firearm. Can you believe that? Ms. Grobler complained on a number of occasions to different managers, but to no avail. The employer did not act. They did not take it serious, or they simply ignored it. However, after she complained to the Human Resource Department, the trainee manager was subjected to a disciplinary hearing and dismissed, right? It should be sorted. Thereafter, Ms. Grobler was diagnosed, and here it comes, with PTSD, severe post-traumatic stress disorder. She sued Naspers, the employer, and the trainee manager jointly and severally for the amount of 250,000 Rand in general damages. In 2004, that was a lot of money, plus medical costs and compensation for loss of income. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you see the picture here? That's the risk for the employer. It's not merely attending to a disciplinary inquiry, taking disciplinary measures, imposing a sanction that's appropriate in the instance, which might obviously, more often than not, it's preferred, be dismissal. There might also be downstream consequences. Now, prevention is always better than cure. Ms. Grobler was accordingly awarded damages in the amount of 150,000 Rand in the Labour Court, and as agreed, medical costs and an amount of 348,000 Rand for loss of income. Evidence and argument on future losses was held over. Naspers and the former trainee manager was ordered to pay these amounts as well as Ms. Grobler's costs jointly and severally. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the monetary risk is real. That is taken from a revenue stream, but also the reputational risk coming with this for the employer in a reported case as naspers is even more severe. Another matter in 2003, which was not so prominent, but complements the matter and the rationale followed in Grobler versus Naspers, is Ntsabu versus Real Security CC. Now picture the circumstances of being a female security guard. Your services invariably are required at night when nobody else is there. You are there to protect and guard assets in the absence of the owner or the employer. Just paints a very, very feasible picture for indiscretions to occur. In this instance, a female security guard resigned after being sexually harassed by her supervisor. She said she had no option but to resign because she could no longer endure the situation, constructive dismissal. And because her employer had ignored her request for assistance, Ms. Ntsabu claimed compensation for unfair dismissal and damages for medical costs, as well as for contumelia, the legal term for pain and suffering, as well as medical expenses. The court in that matter held that Ms. Ntsabu's supervisor had contravened the provisions of the Employment Equity Act. Remember, we said Section 6 sub 3 deals with sexual harassment, bodily integrity, and also defines it as a form of discrimination. Moreover, the conduct had been brought to the attention of Real Security, which turned a blind eye. By doing so, Real Security had also contravened the Employment Equity Act. Sexual harassment is a form of discrimination prohibited by such act. Real Security's failure to deal with the matter, therefore, constituted discrimination within the meaning of the term as defined in the Employment Equity Act. While Real Security could not be penalized for failing to follow the requirement of the code on sexual harassment, that did not mean that it could escape liability by the conduct of the supervisor, vicarious liability. The conduct of the employee is attributed to the company, and the conduct of the company attributed to the employee. That's what we have. So, what is that? Just a moment. Right, there I am. Now, we're not at question and answers yet. I want to discuss with you a further case. And this is a more recent case that happened in the town of Janssenville. If I can just get just a moment, my further slides. Letitia, is the document on the screen? Is it shared?
No, it is still the Ntsabu and Real Security.
Just a moment. I need to take this away. How do I do this? Letitia, I'm going to need some help here. How do I take this away?
Just there should be the open share tray, the block with the arrow, or you could have a cross. If you just click on that, it should be in the center of the Microsoft Teams toolbar. Just stop sharing this one.
Let me say, can I say stop presenting?
Yes.
Okay, stop presenting.
That's it.
Excellent. Then I just going to quickly call up the Inquisi case. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Letitia.
You must just open it in the background and then go back to the block with the arrow to share.
Okay. That might just be there. Just a moment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to put it up, but I'm going to discuss it with you. What happened here was the following. In this matter, this instance occurred in 2009. However, the judgment was only passed in 2016. That's how long it took. It was heard in the High Court of Grahamstown, and the judge was Judge Pickering. Judge Pickering, in her judgment, summarized the circumstances as follows. This was an action for damages in which the plaintiff, an adult female of Janssenville, claimed a sum of 4,028,416 rand and 80 cents, jointly and severally, from the first defendant, who was the Inquezi municipality in that region, Janssenville, Eastern Cape, and the second defendant, Zola Vincent Jack, arising out of alleged sexual assault committed upon her by the second defendant during the course of his duties with the first defendant at the offices of the municipality in Janssenville on Monday, 16 November 2009. Now, in this instance, quantum and merits was separated, meaning they first went on to determining whether there was indeed a case to be made out on behalf of the plaintiff, that she might be entitled to compensation. So the 4 million is out of the equation for this discussion. Now, the circumstances behind this was quite gruesome in the sense that she alleged in a particular claim, the plaintiff now, that the second defendant, acting in accordance scope of his employment with the first defendant municipality, had unlawfully molested and sexually assaulted her by attempting to insert his tongue into her mouth. She alleged further that approximately 3 weeks prior to this incident, the second defendant had addressed words to her bearing sexual connotations. She claimed to have been severely traumatized because of this. She has reported this to the defendant's municipal manager and chief financial officer. However, notwithstanding actions that they've taken to ensure that they were not in each other's presence on a daily basis, when the second defendant, the perpetrator, entered the municipality's offices, in her office, she further felt traumatized and suffered from anxiety attacks. She also then was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and eventually forced to resign from her employment with the first respondent, which she did in November of the next year. Now, although this matter was dealt with by the municipality through a disciplinary inquiry, in the disciplinary inquiry and as a consequence in the sanction, the perpetrator was not dismissed. The perpetrator was simply seconded to Klipplaat, which is a adjacent town to Janssenville. But that didn't cure the plaintiff's ailment. She said that she was always in anticipation of the perpetrator returning unannounced to the offices on official business, but still she would be in his presence. The employer in this instance was criticized for not taking decisive action to the extent that the perpetrator was dismissed. He was not dismissed, he received a final written warning and was seconded to a different town. I'm telling you this because the actions of the employer in being decisive and taking any such transgression seriously cannot be overstated. The reality is that the employer needs to act decisively when sexual harassment is proved in the workplace. It's simply a no tolerance transgression, and there can be no rehabilitation from that in the workplace unless the employer is prepared to run the risk of reputational damage and or financial damage when all is said and done, because the complainant, the victim, can always approach the civil courts for a damages claim on downstream damages that has been suffered, either in general damages, medical damages, or even loss of income. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is important here is this. You need to have a sexual harassment policy in the workplace. You need to inform your employees and workforce about what is the nature, what is the definition of sexual harassment, as well as the consequences potentially, as well as how to avoid it. If that is not done, you as the employer are at risk. And that might, at the end of the day, come back to bite you. If we take it back to the Health and Safety Act, this falls within the ambit of Section 2 and 5 of the Mine Health and Safety Act. And that is the employer's responsibility, the employer who's the holder of the mining right, who's the owner, responsibility to ensure a healthy and safe workplace and to maintain the health and safety of its employees and persons affected by its activities. Now, in taking a risk management model out of the Mine Health and Safety Act, we know that firstly, there needs to be a risk assessment, either a baseline risk assessment, issue-based, or continuous risk assessment. From that, there needs to be created a safe operating procedure that we know in normal operations. Once that is done, your training module should be based on the safe operating procedure to make it relevant and with the necessary integrity. Following that, there must be training, there must be information sharing. What has now been identified in the standard operating procedure needs to be transferred and communicated to the employees. And if there's not adherence compliance, there needs to be enforcement, consequence management. But all this can only be managed through proper supervision. And that's your managerial system in terms of health and safety. You must create a climate where your workforce is sensitized to the aspect of sexual harassment, understanding that it is zero tolerance. Any breach of the rule against sexual harassment, where there's a very clear rule, needs to be understood, and there needs to be compliance with the policy. Because we know in terms of a disciplinary inquiry, what's the 5 things that you look at? A, there must be a rule. In this instance, there must be a clear rule against sexual harassment. There must be knowledge of the rule. That's one of the aspects that you need to prove. If you cannot prove that, you will not be successful or should not be successful in disciplinary inquiry, and you're definitely not going to be successful in the CCMA hearing to follow. So there must be knowledge. There must be consistent application of this rule. So it's zero tolerance. There cannot be an oversight on certain transgressions and others not. Don't step into the sponge thorn that Ekwezi municipality has stepped into. They did not dismiss. They simply transferred and gave a final written warning. So consistent application of the rule and the sanction is important. Then there must be actual breach. That we know, as we stated earlier, is difficult. It's not a simple matter to evaluate on a disciplinary inquiry. Why? Because it's a blend between objective and subjective perceptions in terms of whether a rule was breached, but there must be intent, must be shown and be proven by the employer. Once you're there, you must look at the appropriate sanction. Make sure that your disciplinary code, in terms of the schedule that you usually have of dismissible and non-dismissible offences, that sexual harassment slots into a summary dismissal offence. Having said that, it is the responsibility of the employer, in this instance, the HR manager or HR department, to action these policies and procedures within the workplace. We know that the state has the obligation with guidelines. It is available on the website. Trade unions should also educate their shop stewards as well as their members in terms of what is sexual harassment and the do's and don'ts. But arbitrators, disciplinary chairpersons needs to be sensitized in terms of dealing with disputes and disciplinary inquiries of this nature, as well as the HR manager in terms of dealing with a report of sexual harassment from the outset. Don't make the mistake of not dealing with it with the sensitivity that it requires at the time when it is reported. Letitia, that is my presentation for now, but I seem to have difficulty in playing this Mine Health and Safety Council video, and that is such a pity. But what I'm going to do is the following. When I see you in the next week, I'm going to give you the USB with the video clip on it. I'm not going to take at all recognition for it because it was given to me by the Mine Health and Safety Council, and they did a brilliant job in compiling that with real actors in the mining industry. And maybe this can be shared on the Aspasa portal for people to look at. I do not believe there's IP on it. I will check with the Mine Health and Safety Council, but I don't believe so. And it's to be shared with the industry. Can we make that arrangement?
Yeah, thank you very much, Johan.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I see I'm more or less on time for a change.
Yes, 3 minutes early.
Excellent. Any questions, Letitia?
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask. Because Johan is not going to continue sitting in, so if there's any questions, ask now. We just see if there's any raised hands. No, I think they're all processing, Johan, so you might get an email or two.
100%, and more than welcome.
Thank you. And I just want to give recognition to Oscar Ramapelani, I don't know from which mining house, for giving you the Wi-Fi and his office. He had to exit his office, I presume. And he's welcome to join the rest of it or the next time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Letitia. We'll speak soon.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, and for those who are not aware, on the 28th of July 2020, the Minister of Department of Labour issued the gazetted good practice on prevention of violence and harassment in the workplace. I will circulate it to Aspasa, to circulate to all of you, to make sure that your policies are according to what the government needs or requirements are, if you missed it. So we will share that. And with that, I would like to introduce Santi Brits to you, our next speaker. Santi is a rape survivor, and I'm not going to take her moment of glory, if I can put it that way. She knows how to do this, and thank you, Santi, again for being part of our workshop.
Thank you very much, Letitia. Your Advocate Robenheimer, thank you so much. The information that you shared with us today is extremely crucial. And I'm sitting from my point of view, and I'm not going to say as a victim, because I'm definitely not a victim anymore. I'm definitely a survivor. But if I think of all the detail that you have given to us, it is just mind-boggling what the responsibility of society, and especially the employers, are towards any victim of sexual harassment. So thank you very much for this. And then also, Aspasa, it is an honor for me to be back. I was looking forward to this morning so much, and I couldn't decide should I stand up or sit down, and I was so glad that all of you are sitting down. I hope you do have a cup of coffee. Nothing stronger. You're not going to need that. I'm okay now. But I want to share my story with you, because I always believe that if we have the legal framework, the company framework, the corporate framework, at the end of the day, we can make it our own when we have a story. And I think each one of you, I've picked that up the previous time when I spoke in Pretoria at Aspasa's conference. I picked that up that you, Santi, you are one of millions of men and women who has gone through a sexual traumatic experience. And I want to honor all of you. And with that, I want to read a quote before I start, which says, "A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence." Now, this is where I get excited. Quite a few years ago, I was raped in my home in the Northwest in Potchefstroom. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and my husband was in hospital in ICU and diagnosed with cancer. So you can just imagine the absolute devastation This guy came into my bedroom. I woke up. I remember the previous evening I came back from visiting my husband in ICU, and I was tired, so tired. I fell asleep, and that morning, 7 o'clock, when I woke up because I heard my bedroom door open, and I realized, but it's too early for anyone of the family or even the lady that worked for me to be in our house. And when I looked up, I looked into the eyes of a rapist. The physical fight of my life broke out. You know, we always say that if someone does that to me, I will immediately choke him, or I will kick him, or I will grab a knife, or I will, you know, that moment of surprise and shock and total denial was just overwhelming. I could not, for the life of me, believe what was going on. Now, I'm not going to go into the details this morning because I do believe that some of the details I will share with you, but this is not to upset anybody. This is not to traumatize anyone. But my story is a story of hope after a long, long journey. So I was raped twice within a period of 35, 40 minutes. He strangled me. Yes, he violently abused me. He mocked me. He even went into, I won't say a conversation because that's not what happened, but he even spoke and went into a dialogue, which made me realize that this filthy, filthy gentleman, who was obviously living in the bushes, has done this before. After 40 minutes, he left without stealing anything, and informed me that this was why he came to my house. Now, how do I explain to women in mining, and I also want to welcome the gentleman who is joining this conference, because for me it's more important to have a diversity in the audience than only speaking to women. So how do I explain to the audience today what went down after this? Advocate Johan really explained the devastation, the emotional, physical, and the abuse, what's happened within yourself after something like that. I was in total shock. I phoned one of my friends who is an attorney, and I just said to her, Susa, I was raped. And within minutes, the police arrived. And you know what? It's important today for me to explain to especially men or women who get to come to a scene where sexual harassment or abuse or rape has just taken place. You know, we often respond with anger towards that, and sometimes even feel that if the victim can see how angry we are because of what happened to the victim, it would, you know, it would make the victim feel that you care. And that is not true. That is so not true. The lawyer who arrived first was a male colleague from my friend, and he entered my bedroom with the utmost respect. He didn't come to me and hug me. You know, I was at that stage, I got dressed again. My whole bedroom was trashed. My clothes were torn, the bedding, the curtains. Yeah, it was like a war zone. And he entered and he asked my permission. He said to me, Santi, can I come in, please? And I remember sitting on that bed as if I was in part of a movie. I could not believe what went down. My brain didn't function. Yeah, I was just so devastated. The police came. They went to fetch my children at the university. My daughter went there early that morning because she was a first-year student, and you know, they went and they fetched her. And I still remember they took me out of the bedroom. I sat in the lounge, and my two children came walking up to me, and when they saw me, they realized something terrible must have happened. It's not just a burglary. And I looked up at them and I said to them, I was raped. And I remember them, they were 18 and 20 years old, running towards me, getting onto my lap. And my words to them was, I don't know how we're going to get through this, but I promise you we will. And at that stage, I didn't even have the energy, the mental capacity, or the faith that I would get through this. But I knew they were my children, and they are going to need me more than I'm going to need them. The police came, and you know what? It is very important, especially with sexual harassment in the workplace, to stretch the fact to employers that having to give testimony of what has just gone down, whether it's just been harassment or whether it's been to the extreme of molestation or rape, to sit and do a statement for the police or HR or your sexual harassment officer is secondary rape or secondary abuse. You have to go through every single thing that happened. You have to, in that mental state, try to remember every single thing that happened. And the pressure on you knowing that that would be your statement if you prosecute is an enormous responsibility on someone who has just gone through one of the worst traumas in life. So it is very important for the employer to create an environment that, first of all, is safe, second of all, not judgmental, and thirdly, to allow the victim to have enough time to process what's happened and to put it out there in a statement. You know, that whole process took about 2.5 hours. And I was not allowed to drink water, to wash my face or my hands. I actually smelled like rape. You know, if I sit here, the emotions sometimes just want to overwhelm me because I speak about this a lot. And each time, somewhere along the line in the process, I just realized the devastation of what went down that day. So after giving my testimony and yes, I could put on clothes, but I was not, the police took all of the clothes that was there, my pajamas. I was not allowed to take one little sip of water. And then they took me to the hospital. And again, my story is something that, people out there don't know that. Now you have to go for the rape kit examination, which on its own took 1.5 hours. which on its own was an absolute secondary rape again. Because every millimeter and inch of your body is examined, and they look for semen, they look for saliva, they look for hair. Can you imagine how you feel? I think it was about 1 o'clock that afternoon when I got home, and for the first time I could take a sip of water and I could actually go and have a bath. And now the reality of what went down kicked in, and I realized I've got a husband in ICU. My life was just destroyed. It was smashed by someone's actions that not for 1 minute thought of the consequences of what he has done. I asked my son to drive me to the hospital, and when I got to the hospital, the doctors already informed my husband what happened, and yes, I just walked up to him and we both started crying. I went home that night, and the whole bedroom was stripped of curtains, of bedding, of everything. And my children assisted me going into the bedroom where the rape took place. And that night I slept in my bed with 2 sons on the floor, my daughter and our little dog in the bed. And yeah, I had the worst nightmares of my life. The next morning, I think I slept for about an hour. I heard some noise, and when I looked up, my husband actually told the hospital that he's going home. He discharged himself out of ICU, and he was standing there with a drip and pipes. And I looked at him and I said to him, Peter, you can't come home. I'm not the woman you used to know, and I will not be able to deal with your cancer, because where I am at the moment, there is no capacity, nothing whatsoever to assist you. I'm dead. Emotionally, spiritually, there's nothing left. And he looked at me and he said to me, may I please just sit down? I said, yeah, no, you can. And today it's 12 years later and he's still there. And we both took on this journey of total devastation, total nothingness. And we said to each other, we don't know how. Not one of us knows what the outcome is going to be. But together we will try to get through this. About a week later, they caught the rapist. And I had to go to the ID parade to ID him. He was in a lineup of 10 gentlemen. They swapped his clothes with other people, male, I don't know what you would call them, role players, so that I won't just identify someone on the clothes, I had to identify the face. And when I looked up, I went from number 1, 2, and 3. When I saw number 3, I said to the police, this is the guy. And they said to me, I've got to go back. I have got to go from number 1 to 10, look at each one of them, and then come back and identify again. Which I did. And when I came back, it was definitely number 3. It's a face that I could never forget in my life. Even if he had a mask on, I would have been able to identify him. And when I walked out of that ID parade, I can tell you the 2 weeks before that, I didn't want to be admitted to hospital. I thought, because I knew if I would go to hospital, I don't know if I would come out, because there's this this absolute feeling of, can I not just exit and never ever come back to life? Why didn't he just kill me? You know, so many people said to me, yo, you can be glad he didn't kill you. And I thought afterwards, why do people say this to someone who has just gone through trauma? Because my biggest wish was, why didn't you just take my life? How do I go on? How do I search for Santi? Because she's dead. My spirit and emotionally, I died that day. I really died. And walking out of the ID parade, I just collapsed on the floor. I cried like a dog being hit by a car. My husband took me to my doctor, who was also my friend, and I walked into a consulting room and I just sat there and I said to her, Helena, you can really admit me to any institution that you want. I cannot go through this journey. I will not be able to be a mother or a wife or a businesswoman ever again. And I remember so clearly, she looked at me and she also cried because we were very good friends. And she said to my husband, I'm going to give Santi a prescription, and I know you're not going to like that, Peter. And he looked at me and he looked at her and she gave the prescription to him. And I remember I still thought, oh, well, maybe she's going to put me in a clinic for 2 years. I don't know. But I felt nothing. And when he looked at the prescription, he started crying. And he gave the prescription to me. And on her prescription pad, there was a few words that read, one little doggy that only loves Santi. I looked at her and I said, Helena, I don't want a dog. There's no way that I want a dog. I want to exit. And she said to me, Santi, I know you. You will never forgive me if I allow this. And that evening, this poodle, French poodle, and he was black and his name is Licorice, came home with me, and he is still sleeping with me every single night. And this is where I want to take our viewers a little bit back to wherever you were in your life, where you got to a point where you didn't know how to fight back, where you didn't know how to get up, whether it's divorce, whether it's finances, whether it's COVID, whether it's just depression or abuse or sexual harassment, molestation, rape. I want to ask you for a few seconds just to sit and close your eyes and think of something in your life that really matters. I know that if I touch Licorice and he gets onto my lap, there's something in my brain that tells me, Santi, there's a greater picture, there's a bigger picture. There's a God that created a little animal that could comfort you and walk with you on a journey to healing. To someone else, it might be a book that they read. It might be a friend. It might just be something in nature, a flower, a tree. It might be exercise. Go and think what that might be for you. And remember for the rest of your life that it doesn't matter what you go through. Time is the miracle. The healing power of time is something that we cannot stop. If you have a wound, it might take years to heal, but it does. And if you make the choice, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. I remember there was a stage where I said to myself, you've got to get through this next 30 minutes. So just after 30 minutes, you can have a total meltdown again. And then it went up to 45 minutes, and then it went up to an hour. And I don't know, up to today, I don't really know how, but now it went into days, it went into months, and it went into years. So where you are today, whatever the circumstances are, you have to know that you must pace yourself. God didn't say these 7 days, take it and live it. He said, in the morning the sun will come up, but every single night when the sun goes down, there will be a new tomorrow. You know, the process of the legal process on that you have to go through when they catch the victim, which happens 1 out of 9 times, maybe 1 out of 15, is not an easy road. And having to prepare for the court case and going to court, standing in the box, having the victim 2-3 meters from me, having to testify, going into this every single detail, and then at the end of the day, he was allowed to have legal aid, and his lawyer jumping in, even although the DNA tested positive, they said that it wasn't possible for him to rape me twice within that period, because if I was only raped once, the sentence would have been 7 to 15 years. But if the proof was there that he raped me twice, it could be 15 to life. And you know, when that legal aid lawyer jumped in and he just, I can say, harassed me, something in me, a little fire, became so big. And I decided and I realized that something, if you crack today under this pressure, forever, you will feel as if you failed other women. If this guy walks today, he is going to rape again. So your testimony is so crucial, and that made me nervous, but that also energized me to think that if only one lady, if I could only stop this man from raping one other lady, it was worth it. And after hours, that evening, the judge ruled that this gentleman is sentenced to life. And I can tell you, I think my life started falling back into little pieces day by day after that court case. It was still the absolute fear of, do I have sexual transmitted diseases or HIV/AIDS? So there are all those things that people don't think about, that you live with. Now, you know, now it's almost a year after the rape. So every day you deal with this stuff. And then there's something else, and I know women and men that has gone through any of this would know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not only you as the victim that is raped. It is your whole family. It is your environment. Because nothing is ever the same. I will never be the same mother than I was before I was raped. I would never be the same wife. I would never be the same businesswoman. And the hard thing about this is the choice is not with the rapist or with the family. The choice of what type of wife I'm going to be, what type of mother, what type of human being That choice is with me. It's with you, where you are sitting today. And I know it sounds so hard, and I just want to check the time now, I'm still fine. I know it sounds very hard, but that choice is with you. Now, you can say this morning, you know, this whole COVID thing, I've lost people so close to me, or this whole vaccine debate, or the circumstances at work. Now, I've got to work from home, the family is there, or I have to travel to work and I'm scared of the disease, or my finances have just collapsed completely. All of those things. Or I sit in a workplace where I was harassed sexually. You know, all of those things, they become burdens on our shoulders. But I want to say to you this morning that God has given us this incredible power that we do have a choice. We do have a choice. We don't have a choice to what is happening to us and around us. We do have a choice of how we react to that. And if we take that little piece of wisdom, and the other one is it's okay if you're not okay. It's okay if you're not okay 20 times a day. If there's 24 hours, and out of that 24 hours, you have survived another day. Wow, it is amazing. Sometimes you don't feel as if you're a survivor, but you are. And the story of Iduck is such a beautiful, heartfelt story. The police started calling me after the court case and said to me, "But Santi, there's a rape victim. Would you mind to assist us?" And I would go because I would know what she's going through. And one day Childline phoned me and they said, "There's a lady, Sina, and she was raped in her home in front of a little girl." And I got to see her and we had a few consultations. And she was talking about the voices in her head, and she knows that she is psychologically absolutely not the same, and that there's an evil spirit that came into her after this. And I could say to her, you know what, it's not an evil spirit, it's yourself, your subconscious. It's not a funny voice, it's your subconscious trying to protect you, trying to warn you, having trigger moments, thinking, you know, a subconscious doesn't have a time or a date. So what happens is your subconscious would say, Santi, this person is too close to you, and I would get an anxiety attack. And if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have been able to assist Tina. And after about 2 years, they caught Sina's rapist. But what I didn't know in the process, her little girl went to nursery school and then to grade 1, is that little Magdalene stopped communicating in the process. And after I was raped, someone gave me a little plastic duck, a beautiful duck. And I still thought at that stage, what should I do with this? But I put it on my bedside table, and many evenings when I had these dreams or these anxiety attacks, I looked at this little duck and I just realized with a love that this beautiful plastic toy was given to me as a 46-year-old woman. It meant so much to me. And I went to speak at a conference once in Bella Bella, and I thought, what did I speak about? And I thought, maybe I should take this duck and just tell the ladies that please don't go and Bible slap someone or go and, walk in and say, we'll kill the rapist. Go, it's the little things that makes a difference. It's the little things, the licorice or the plastic duck that carried me through. I came back in Potchefstroom and I turned around in my car and there the duck was still on the back seat. I never took it out at the conference. And I still laughed and I said, God, so why did the poor duck travel 500 k's? And when I walked into my office, Childline phoned me and they said, Santi, the court case of Sina's rapist is in 2 weeks' time. and they need little Magdalene to testify, and she doesn't speak. Not about the rape, not about anything. Is there anything that you can assist us with? And I said to them, yes, you can bring it to my office. And I walked out to my car and I said, God, now I understand the duck. And they brought her, and the social worker and the psychologist was there. And I looked at her and I said to her, Magdalene, what happened to you, your mommy, happened to me. And it took me a very long time, and someone gave this precious duck to me. And it helped me to get healing. And I'm fine now. But this duck needs to go to someone, and your mommy is fine. If you look at the lights in her eyes and she's working again, she's fine. But I think this little duck needs to come to you. And I put it on her lap. And ladies and gentlemen, that little girl started speaking to the duck. And 2 weeks later, she testified in court, in camera. And the rapist of her mother was sentenced to 15 years. And that is the story of IDUC. The South African Council of Businesswomen contacted me and they said to me, Santi, we read the article in a magazine, can't we do something with the duck? And we thought of starting, you must now remember this rape victim, this devastated rape victim. This is 3 years later. We started, I founded a non-profit organization, and when we were thinking of the name, we thought maybe we should do something with the duck, and because I love my iPad and my iPhone, we decided to name it iDuck, which stands for Initiative for Dedicated Upliftment and Care. And today, iDuck is a national organization. We have done the campaigns for Varsity Cup for the sexual harassment. We manufacture little soft toy ducks that we give to rape victims. We are starting a whole sewing hub within the next 2 weeks. So I'm extremely excited about that. And we also manufacture gowns for rape victims, because you must remember the police take their clothes. When they come to the rape crisis centres, then, they don't have anything to wear. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I think of my story, and I think of the pain, and I think of the process, and I think of where I was and where I am today, I want to say to you, to all the women in mining and all the men, that this is a tsunami and a disease in our communities that we have to deal with. And there are two role players in this tsunami of rape and sexual harassment. The one is the victim. And that is why it is so important to me to have the victim looked after, taken care of, and having a solid process where she can have healing within a safe working place, a safe family space, and a safe environment, being assisted through the process, the sexual harassment process at the office or at government level, judiciary, when they have to go through to a court case, and even if the victim is not caught, having to go through a process where there's assistance and counseling and help so that she can heal again psychologically. To interrupt myself, I just need to tell you that I spoke to a psychologist one day, and he said to me that the brain of any person who went through sexual harassment if you have to put it down as a example, if you have to compare that to a physical condition, it would be someone who is in ICU on a ventilator and machines and unconscious for 6 months to a year. It would be someone that was hit with baseball bats against the head for 20 minutes non-stop. That is the intensity of what is happening emotionally to someone who goes through that type of trauma. And you know what? The marks, the scars, the wounds heal very, very quickly. And that is the problem. You have to live and go on with life. And actually, you are emotionally and psychologically not able to. You are on a ventilator. You cannot look out for yourself. So that is the one priority for me in IDOC. And speaking to companies like I do this morning, I really want to urge you to not only have this as a 16 days of activism initiative, but to take this to heart and to be a living example of a company who is really not tolerating any behavior like this. And the other leg is I really do feel very passionate about speaking to men, especially regarding my story, regarding the circumstances, regarding what we as women expect from men who doesn't rape. I spoke at Coca-Cola once, and there was about 300 men from the truck driver right up to the CEO. And after I finished my talk, they stood up and they said, but that is such a problem for men because they do not know what to do and we do not tell them what we do expect. And this is for me, I think, my biggest calling. Because if we can address the 70% men that does not participate in sexual harassment, to stand up and live a life of no tolerance and be alert and having to know what to look out for and be outspoken in the workplace, in the church, at a party, at a braai, at whatever, then we will be able to get to a tipping point where this tsunami and the damage that's been done can be turned around. And I'm not naive. I am definitely not naive. I know that it is accomplishable. We will be able to do that. But we must stop only looking at our victims. We must start speaking to the real men in society. Because there I also want to assure all the men and the women, you know, because these things get such bad publicity, there's such a stigma around men being rapists and men that don't care. So for me, I want to honor the men in this meeting this morning. I want to say to management, to Nico, to Johan that spoke, to Marius, thank you. Thank you for being 3 men that I know in a massive company that does care. Because if we can just get this viral, I promise you, women and children in South Africa will be safe. I want to read this again. A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. Even if you are a victim today of pain, or of sexual abuse and harassment. Your persistence in not giving up every single day will give hope to everyone around you. I want to urge you to speak up. I want to challenge the company to create a safe environment. And I want to thank your management team for inviting me today. It is such an honor. And yeah, this is actually why I didn't die that day. Was because I had an appointment today with each one of you. Somewhere along the line, you will remember something about today. And you will know that not COVID, not rape, not a financial recession can murder the spirit that God has placed in you. You must just go and look for the Santi God created. Thank you very, very much. And I want to invite everybody, and you are so welcome to give my number, Letitia, if there's anyone, or you can contact me like in the past, and I can set up a Zoom appointment with anybody. And yeah, I would really like to have a year with your company where we can really focus on the different divisions, and where we don't only do this for the 16 days of activism. Thank you. I honor you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Santi. Before I close off and Santi goes off camera, is there any questions? We've got a minute or two left. I don't see any hands. Santi, just a phenomenal story. It's the second time that I'm listening to your story, and I'm in tears every time. But what is born from this is absolutely the strength and the learning for me. And I want to ask the participants two questions. Are you ready to manage a rape case in your work environment? And number two, are you ready to support a rape victim even if it didn't happen in your workplace? And I think that's the lesson I want everybody to take with, and that Santi is there to help. I've shared a number already. We don't force individuals. I shared a number. It's up to the individual now to contact Santi. So don't wait. If you want Santi for your companies, you are welcome. I think it's an important factor. And also the men. I think that's one of our drives in Women in Mining as well, to make sure men is always part of all initiatives and platforms where we discuss issues of women. So thank you very much, Santi. Appreciate and honor you for speaking up for all women.
Thank you, Letitia. And I just want to mention that we also do training at different companies. So if they need us to come out and do training, they are so welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we are dead on time. Our participants and speakers are really living to the agenda. Next on the agenda, last time, if you can remember, we had the Women in Mining chairperson from Gauteng speaking. And now we will have Lucretia van Rensburg from the Western Cape, because Aspasa is not just in one region. Aspasa covers all regions, to give you the information and the platforms. I saw a hand flashing up and going down. Before I hand over to Lucretia, is there any questions or comments? Yes, Ntumeng Mao.
Yes, dear. I just wanted to ask you, where did you share the number?
We will share it after this conference. We shared it individually to an individual directly,
Okay.
but we will share the number after today, Ntumeng.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for asking that, a very important question. Thank you. Thanks. Lucretia, over to you.
Morning, everybody. Thank you very much. It's going to be hard to follow up on Santi and what she's brought. But yeah, I'll just give you a bit of a background in terms of, firstly, from AfriSam point of view, from where I work, and then also from the Women in Mining for the Western Cape. So I'll just share, if you just give me a minute. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So obviously, just to introduce myself, I work for AfriSam. We're a member of Aspasa, and we work in the construction materials business. And I have been the Women in Mining chairperson for the Western Cape for the last 2.5 years. And I was elected. The Western Cape was one of the last of the provinces to go through the election process of establishing a Women in Mining committee within the Mines Health and Safety Council. So without further ado, just to give you a bit of background in terms of AfriSam, I know my counterpart in Gauteng did speak a little bit in the last meeting with regards to Gauteng. Bareng mentioned that she's also part of the Women in Mining for AfriSam, the committee within AfriSam. So basically we have 3 regions, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and Western Cape, where we all have Women in Mining committees established. And we basically meet on a quarterly basis. And unfortunately, as with most other places, a lot of our meetings and stuff were impacted quite heavily last year with COVID. But we are getting back on track. Our ladies in Gauteng had a Women in Mining Day, a Women's Day event. I know here in Cape Town we had one of our meetings recently, and it was a good meeting where a lot of the ladies were prepared to share a lot of the stories and that you don't know about, especially when things happen to them in terms of sexual harassment. They're willing to tell that it did happen to them and that they are better and stronger for it afterwards. And I think having the committee there where they are able to freely speak also helps other women understand what they've gone through and what they can expect from when they do go through a process such as this. So building up on this, we are obviously going to be looking at a lot of events that are happening, especially the 16 days of activism coming up as well. And we're wanting to make sure that we spread the news within AfriSam, and which is very, supported by our management, who are very much involved. And yeah, so we are fortunate enough to have representation and support from them. Just moving on to Women in Mining for the Western Cape. So basically our mandates for Women in Mining in the Western Cape is obviously for the promotion of health and safety and security of women in mining in the South African mining industry. And our mandate is to protect, to promote and create awareness of issues concerning health and safety of women in mining in the Western Cape, and to empower women on the issues affecting them in the mining industry. We stand for empowering and enabling women in mining in the region to take care of their own health and safety. We're empowering women mining operations to ensure health and safety of women in mining, tripartisan and diversity. So that being said, we meet, we have a committee, and we meet and we obviously discuss the issues that are very much part and parcel of what we are discussing today and what we have discussed. And being the Western Cape, we have got mines. Most of them are open cast mines. We have very different challenges to the challenges that are faced by mining organizations that have underground mining. But we do face challenges, and this is what our Women in Mining Committee is there for, to address these challenges and trying to find a way forward to ensure that the women that we represent are have got a place to be able to discuss their issues and to bring forward issues, and that we can assist them in finding solutions for these problems that they face. I know we've discussed a lot of the obstacles. I think they're pretty much a lot the same, where we have to deal with them. A lot comes from the mindsets of persons, which is difficult to overcome, especially in the physical aspect of the work to be done. A lot of preconceived ideas from the male population within the workforce is often that the ladies are unable to do the work that they do, because of obviously the physical strength that is required to do the job. So whilst harassment cases are reported, it is dealt with on a confidential basis, so obviously with the relevant HR personnel, which is there to assist. But the problem is that often it doesn't always necessarily have the same resources available to the smaller mines that we often find, where you have probably 6 or 7 employees on a mine. It's very difficult for them to obviously take the issues forward. So this is where we want to bring the message to them that there is obviously avenues that they can use, where they can be assisted if they're reporting any cases of sexual harassment or gender-based violence. The female workforce raised their concerns, as I said, which we are happy that they are willing to do, because in some cases it's a very personal issue, and there's a lot of fear of retribution if they do report these issues. And so many cases it often goes unreported. Furthermore, our challenges, not knowing what Santi has said today, the message that she brought is, when I wrote this, I also thought a lot about, what we have to identify, the highlighting the need for the issues relating to women in mining, and the recognition of these issues that are being addressed through the work done by the Mines Health and Safety Council, the establishing of women committees and rolling out codes of practice for matters relating to women in mining. Our challenge is now to ensure that such matters are reported and how we go about dealing with these very sensitive matters. And it's good to know that there are people like Santi who can obviously give us the tools and give us the training through other organizations, obviously, as well, because I don't think not all of us will know exactly how to deal with such sensitive matters. And furthermore, our challenge is when we know that persons are being sexually harassed, persons are experiencing gender-based violence, but the victim is not willing to report it either to the employer or to the South African Police Services. It's how can we get involved to assist this person, to work with that person, because often there are obviously cases that prevent the woman from reporting, such as that they fear for their children, they fear that their children will be removed from them. So it's very difficult. And for me, our biggest challenge for me is the information and training that we have to have in place so that we actually do no harm, further harm. And that's one of the things that I picked up on from Santi's presentation, is that she said when the police came in and the lawyer came in, he asked permission. And so these are the things, the tools that we need to have to be able to deal with this. And I think it's something that one of the things that we need to look at going forward, that is, if we are in these positions to assist people, that we have the tools to be able to do that. Furthermore, obviously, as I said, small scale mines, we don't have the necessary resources. We rely on information from being shared by our DMR inspectors, our RTF meetings, the Mines Health and Safety Council's correspondence, and Aspasa members' communication. Where we hope that this message that we bring, that the workshops that we have like today, that message and that information gets disseminated to these smaller mines, that there's at least a presence of a person that knows that there is work being done and there is assistance if required. Often the problem is that the perception of that a woman is only a subject matter, and that very few male workforce want to be involved with it. I find even within our company, there's often sometimes resistance, and about hiring female workers due to this. As I said before, they're not being able to do the work because it's quite it's the items are heavy and there's different things that have to happen. And then obviously we have to deal with historical cultural beliefs that also plays a very big role in the various roles from management to the work on the plant level. And that's why it's encouraging to see when I was looking through the name list of who's attending that there are people from the male population who are attending this, and hopefully that this message will also be shared with the people that work on their operations. And then it goes down to the very bottom, that the guy that works on in the plant on the floor, that does the actual day-to-day work, that he is included in exactly the same way as what management is included, that he gets the same message and where we stand for as a company on these issues, and that obviously there are avenues that they can report if they see things, if it happens to them, if it happens to females, that they encourage reporting these type of things and events, that they can be stopped, that we can have a workforce that is respectful of everybody who works on that operation. Okay, so positive steps to change. For AfriSam, our establishment of our committees is fully supported by AfriSam, and we're obviously moving forward with that. In terms of the women in mining for the Western Cape, it's encouraging to see that more and more of the mining operations are becoming more involved and starting to establish committees and continuing to ensure continual representation of the matters relating to women in mining. The ladies are invited to functions at these companies, and obviously there's a lot of fun that happens, but also the message gets through at the end of the day as well, that this is a serious matter and we are addressing that. And I think the ladies are becoming also more and more appreciative of what is being done for them, and are obviously more and more feeling that they have the opportunity to come forward and discuss any issues that they feel that they need to report on or relate to. We have the Mines Health and Safety Council regional WIM committees, as I said. The Western Cape being quite big, we are actually divided up into 4 different regions within the Western Cape. And I have 2 deputy chairpersons who assist me. I've got Joanne Hine, who is for the George area, that she assists from her side. And then I've got Pumza Chene, that she's in the Vredendal area, in the northern part of the Western Cape. So they are there to assist as well. So what I want to say is that if anybody on today's session that is in the Western Cape that would like more information on women in mining or what we do, I'm happy to give my own details out, as well as the 2 deputy chairpersons information, that they can help you in establishing committees. If you've got any things you would like to discuss, they are there to assist in any way that we can. Furthermore, the Mines Health and Safety Council website has additional information and brochures on many of the women in mining related topics. And yeah, if anybody needs any further information, there is printed information, but also the websites are available to everybody else. And then lastly, the Mines Health and Safety Council in Durban. We had one in 2020. Unfortunately, last year we couldn't have because of COVID, but it was so well represented with women from mining across South Africa. It was a huge success, and the stories and the good work that came from that, which is still being done today, where we're looking at different issues that have come up. The support that there is there, it's amazing to have it. And yeah, we're going forward. We would definitely like to make sure that everybody has this, has access to these different types of functions and stuff where women can actually come and attend and see what is being done by the Mines Health and Safety Council and the Women in Mining committees thereof. And then lastly, just in terms of 16 days of activism, just let us be a voice for the people that are out there. And yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you, Lucretia. Any questions?
Any questions?
And just while I watch, if there's any raised hands, just for your information, being a chairperson of the region as big as Western Cape and even Gauteng, I see Nariadi, my chairperson, also dialed in today. It is voluntary. It's additional on top of your normal duties that you would do for your company. So thank you very much, Lucretia. I said you said it's tough to follow up on Santi, but just being a volunteer, standing up for women in the workplace already, you're a survivor of mining because you've also been in mining 15, 17 years now. So thank you very much for your wat is opoffering? Sacrifice. And Nico?
Sorry, Letitia, I just want to say something, and I've been sitting here with quite some tears in my eyes after I listened to Santi and the speakers and you driving this. I must just say, if you're in small companies and you find that this thing is happening, and nobody's dealing with it, you can always phone me. Although I'm the head of Aspasa, I was an HR director for a big company many years ago, and I was one of the first people that had to deal with a rape case in a company, and the top management, the rest of the board was anti me, and they all crucified me, and so for the end of the day, I dismissed the guy and got rid of him, and the woman workforce came into my office. I thought they were coming to attack me. They said they came to thank me because I'm the first man that stood up against this, and that left a mark in my inner, because I never knew these things were not being dealt with, which is quite scared when you listen to the advocate. And really, I'm saying it. Please contact me. I'll give the HR person or whoever's dealing with some advice. I've also got a master's degree in labor law, so I'm an old trade unionist, so I understand these things. I thought I'd just share this with you all because I think Letitia, you've hit the nail on the head today with this workshop. It's so forceful. Thank you very much, and again, it will be on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lucretia. Next, I see Leslie has dialed in already. I also thought it good to share some suppliers that support women in mining with women PPE. So with every session that we're going to have one supplier coming to present. I don't want you to think competition, commission and procurement bypasses here by all means. And we utilize Rondo from time to time as one of our suppliers. And contacting Isabel, they were willing to come and present today. So Lucretia, if you can just stop sharing, and then I can ask Leslie. Leslie is the director of Rondo, so thank you very much for sending such a high-profile individual to attend this session. Over to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Letitia. I think just before we start, is there any way that I can just load a presentation up?
If you have the presentation open on your screen in the background and you look on Microsoft Teams, the tool, there's a block with the arrow showing up. If you click on that, it will open the window with your document open, and you double click on the document. It should then show on our side.
Where is it on?
On
the sorry.
You see it? Okay, not a problem. I know we all use different virtual platforms. We will be patient. We've got some time. We are ahead of time, so. And then if you can just put it in presentation slide mode, because we can see it on our side now.
Okay, is it on slide mode by you now?
Not yet, just give it a moment. Sometimes it does take a... No, not yet.
Letitia, I can see it.
Okay, if it's visible for everybody, we can continue in the format that it is currently.
Yes, thank you. It's visible.
Thank you. Thanks, Leslie.
No, it's fine.
I just thought it prudent to bring along the other director of the company, Kaitumetsu Mogale, and she'll be doing the first 2 slides for us, whereby I'll then take over the rest of the presentation. Over to you.
Good day, all. I hope you guys are well. I'm Kaitumetsu Mogale, and I'll be taking you guys through the contents, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Rondo. Then I'll hand over to Leslie. So on the contents, we have about Rondo, mineral assets, a global industry, women in mining SA milestones, women in mining SA statistics, women in mining SA industry challenges facing manufacturers, and then we have our conclusion. About Rondo. Rondo is a truly South African premier supplier on personal protective equipment, PPE.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Your slides are not moving, so we're not on slide 3.
Okay.
We're still on slide 1. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So, just while I see there's a few guys that say they cannot see. If your network connection is a bit bad, you will struggle to see the presentation, unfortunately. So Tsepo and Makadu, maybe it's the network connection on your side. You can continue.
I was not talking of the presentation that I cannot see. I was suggesting that how about everyone who's coming for presentation, we first saw them because we need to know whom we are talking to.
If they have camera ability, they can switch on the camera.
How do you even put it on slide? How do you put it on slide? You ask.
Leslie, your presentation disappeared.
Yeah, I think we're having some network problems here, Letitia.
How do you put it on slide?
Yeah. While Leslie is setting up, I'll give you oh, there we go.
Okay, have you got it now?
Yeah, we can see now.
Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, so let's, are we on the content slide now by everyone? Let's just get the timing going.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, so we were at about Rondo, so let Katie just finish up and then we can start.
Okay, so I'm gonna start again. About Rondo. Rondo is a truly South African premier supplier of personal protective equipment, PPE. Rondo was founded in 2005 and is rated BBBEE Level 2. Every guard, our manufacturer facility situated in KZN, is ISO 9001:2015 accredited and has accreditation to manufacture SABS 1228 and SABS 416 PVC and nitrile hand protection, respiratory equipment, and eye protection. Every guard is also rated BBBEE Level 2. We employ plus minus 300 employees at both our distribution facility in Johannesburg and manufacturing facility in Hammersdale, KZN, to deliver on its South African operations. We serve over 3,500 customers locally in South Africa and most SADC countries, supported by strategically placed warehouses situated in Johannesburg and Durban. Rondo and Every Guard supports local South African content with specialized non-local PPE and raw materials sourced from strategic partners globally. Over to you, Leslie.
I just thought it prudent just to give a background regarding mining in first of all from a global perspective, and then basically coming back to South Africa. So where I come from, I've been in the mining industry for the past 30 years, just before I joined Rondo. So I've been in supply chain and I'm an engineer by trade. So all the issues that were brought up throughout these presentations has been on the burner for quite some time. So just some milestones that I think are quite important, specifically in the mining industry. So the Mine Health and Safety Act in 1995 was the first time that women were permitted to work below surface. In 2015, the DMR brought out the guideline to the MCOP for women in mining of PPE issued. And then in 2020, the Minerals Council of SA formulated a white paper for women in mining. But I think the most important to this is, with the code of practice or the mandatory code of practice, which is stipulated in the Mine Health and Safety Act, is that the employer must prepare and implement a code of practice on any matter affecting the health and safety of its employees. Now, this is basically what makes up the women in mining PPE at this stage. And as we'll progress in the presentation, you'll see that it's actually quite a challenge to comply with some of these acts if the activities of the mines aren't stipulated to the manufacturers. Just some stats for South Africa. In 2019, there were about 455,000 people employed in mines, of which 12,000 of this figure represented women. Now, the figure for 2022 is projected at an estimated 73,000, which is quite a fair amount if you take the numbers in South Africa. I think the current numbers for people working on SA mines are in the region of just over 500,000. What further the Minerals Council of SA did, they actually broke it down per commodity. Now, what's very interesting from a from a manufacturing point of view is, in the quick facts for 2019, is that top management is 17% of this. And then senior management is also 17%. And then on the professional basis, 24%, which implies it could imply engineers, ventilation officers, and so forth, and safety officers, and to the likes of that. And then basically your skilled technical professions, which will be your artisans and so forth, is 18%. So if you add all that up, it actually gives a total different picture to what we supposed to be looking at, in the fact that out of the 19,000 for PGMs, if you break that down, then we can certainly imply that the rest of it will be people that are not in these categories, or that are in certain activities that is not benchmarked at the top, which in itself, from a supplier point of view, makes it very, very difficult to understand these figures. Because if you have a blanket approach to this regarding a COP, it doesn't suffice to say that you're covering all the areas, insofar that every single mining activity or mining method changes with these figures. So for instance, there's a huge discrepancy, what we're seeing from a manufacturing point of view, of who's working on the surface activity for surface mining, or some of the smaller mining groups, and who's working underground, which implies that a COP must be relevant to a certain activity whereby any person is measured by. And another important thing is what we're picking up from a manufacturing point of view is the selection and placement of employees is of utmost importance for a manufacturer to manufacture certain goods for employees. Is there any questions so far on this that maybe I'm just over the top a bit regarding the way of the blanket COP and so forth?
Makadu, is that a legendary hand, the old hand?
No, it's an old hand.
Okay, thank you.
Let me put it down.
No, I think, Leslie, we're good. I don't see any hands. Thank you.
Okay, some of the other challenges faced by the employers is that, and this was all through the Minerals Council, and I did see something coming up by the previous speaker, it's labor-intensive mines requiring physical, arduous work under challenging conditions. And things like most women do not have the same levels of physical strength as most men. And then under the equipment is that, which is totally true, is historically the PPE has been designed and manufactured with men in mind. So the picture on the right-hand side just depicts on basically what is the current status quo of PPE in the mining industry. You know, like one-piece overalls or ill-fitting shoes, hard hats, and gloves. So us manufacturers, we actually face different challenges to what you guys are facing, because what actually happens is, if most mining companies have no clear code of practice, and as I mentioned in the previous slides, that was promulgated in 2015, in relation with foot and workwear for women in mining. The peripherals regarding PPE has been resolved. And in most cases, what we found is that the issuing protocol, now that is basically derived from a COP from a mine, is based on men. So we issue, or the manufacturer or supplier will issue according to a man's issuing protocol, which is not the same, because there are quite big differences in the makeup of these PPE instances. The other issue that we're also facing is that all mining companies, whether you're a junior or you're a senior mining company, your CI changes. So from a manufacturing point of view, some companies would like a two-tone shirt, or some companies would like a D59 only, and some companies would like a J54 only. The problem with that is that you then get too many different types and makes that is not for the manufacturer anything. It doesn't do the economies of scale. And what it also does is that it actually narrows down an effort whereby one solution could be given to a certain activity, whereby the mining company CI is actually currently dictating the way that the manufacturers are moving into manufacturing the specific garments. The other issue that we also found is there's a lot of customization being done to the workwear specifically for ladies. And most manufacturers are not set up to deal with this, because it always becomes like a boutique, that certain things fit certain people. And in South Africa, specifically in the PPE world, not any of our manufacturers are set up for customization, which makes it very difficult to deal with some of these issues. And then the other issue that does come up is that between manufacturers, there is also not a standardized sizing curve and so forth for women in mining, which aggravates the thing that we've got different CIs, we've got no COPs, and we're still busy with customization. So yes, just the conclusion of how we as manufacturers look at. There has been a lot of progress been made in the design and manufacture of PPE, but I think we need a fundamental shift in collaboration between the mining companies in standardizing the COP in terms of CI. CI can be done through a logo or something to that, but it has to be standardized where we standardize on how we manufacture these items. Also, what the mining health and safety, the Mining Council of South Africa mentioned, is that mechanization will level the playing fields. But it also needs to be appreciated that most of the underground mining operations will never be at that point. There'll always be a conventional mining space and will always continue to operate in that space. And as we can see in the South African industry, specifically gold, about 15 years ago, we were still number one on the production of gold. Today, we are not even on the top 10. So we also believe that as manufacturers, we have to approach and resolving the legacy conventional mines first in women in mining PPE, because the other activities, mechanized mining and surface mining, is at a much better space than what the conventional minings are at this point in time. We also believe that the selection and placement criteria will become very important in the manufacture of standardized PPE, as currently we are finding a lot of customization you know, that have a big impact on the comfortability and ergonomics of some users of women in mining PPE. We also believe that the manufacturers of PPE have the necessary expertise when it comes to the women in mining PPE, and I've just included the action plan by the Mining Minerals Council of South Africa, where we could play a big part in developing the relevant PPE for the relevant activities. The Women in Mining PPE matrix need to take cognizance of on-site specific baseline risk assessments, which is very important for this exercise. Because as we see, even in the underground operation, there's so many different activities that take place, and most of the designs at this stage takes cognizance of a blanket approach to this, which is not relevant to the activity that some of the women are subjected to in the underground operations. The other issue that we are sitting with is that most mining companies outsource their PPE management functions, which is fundamentally flawed, as most of the companies are distributors and do not have the correct level of expertise to deal with the issues at hand. Together, most mining companies contract these PPE companies. In other words, the stock that is on hand actually belongs to the service provider. So there's no incentive to keep stock of the correct equipment on site for specifically women in mining. The other issue that we are picking up in the PPE industry is there's very little capital investment in product development within the PPE industry, and it has really become a cutthroat business where it's been run on margins rather than to come up with decent solutions of how to deal with these problems. Okay, that's us for Rhonda at this stage. Thanks for attending. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Leslie. Participants, any questions to Rhonda, to Leslie? Just from my side, I don't think the participants expected what they have seen today. Very related to the industry, very related to our challenges. And I don't think we, as the mining company ordering, took into account the challenges when we place the order. And I think that was an eye-opener for me as head of safety in our company. Any questions? You do see the detail of Rhonda on the screen, and you will also find it when you go onto YouTube Aspasa. Thank you very much for the presentation. If there's no further questions, thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end, a whole 15 minutes or half an hour actually before the time, which is very strange when it comes to an event where a lot of women attend. It was very quiet from the participants, but I am looking forward to the next Aspasa Gender Justice session. Your contribution on what you would like to see at the next event, please share it with Aspasa and with myself. There's definitely two items that I, as the chairperson, would want to share, and that is getting the mining charter and the supply chain opportunities for women in mining, a presentation on that. And then somebody from SAPS also to guide us on how to deal with violence and sexual harassment cases from a police perspective, so that we understand that. And then we will wait for more information from the members. Anthony? Leslie, your screen is still...
Hi, Letitia. Yes.
Sorry. Yes, Anthony.
Yeah, I just wanted to say well done on this an absolutely dynamic program today. I think it was, I sat here very quietly, which is very unusual for me, as you know. Santi just blew us away. I mean, that was scary. So yeah, well done. I think it's really hit the mark, and let's hope it makes a difference. It certainly has motivated us all to get stuck in again. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Anthony. Anybody else before I hand back to Nico? I think that's it, Nico. Thank you very much for Aspasa again, and Anneke, all your arrangements and help. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Letitia. Thanks to everybody that participated, all the good speakers, and you've done very, very well. And I can't wait for the next one in the 4th month next year. So please contribute, and Anneke will let you know where the presentation is on the YouTube. Thanks, and go well. And it's nearly Friday, so enjoy the rest of the short week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Letitia. Thanks, Mika.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Letitia, don't forget.